I turned 61 that day, and all I wanted was a quiet dinner with my son, his wife and a few friends, nothing grand, just good food, warm company, and maybe a toast to another year of keeping myself together without falling apart. Instead, I ended the night in complete silence, staring across a candle-lit table as my only child publicly claimed something that had never been his to take. The night started normal enough. The restaurant was one of those trendy new places. Ashley picked exposed brick, hanging Edison lights, servers who called you boss. I had barely sat down before. She handed me a gift bag with tissue paper fluffed like a peacock. Inside was a printed baby that said, "Best grandma ever." "We thought it was time," she said, all wide eyes and manicured sweetness, "to start planning the nursery." "Right, Daniel." He smiled, almost too calm, too rehearsed, and nodded. "Yeah, especially since we'll have more space soon." I blinked. "More space?" Ashley leaned in across the table. "We're just so grateful you agreed, Mary. Honestly, not every mom would be this generous." The table went quiet. I frowned, unsure what I had supposedly agreed to. Before I could ask, Daniel stood up and tapped his spoon against his wine glass. "Can I have everyone's attention for a second? Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe. And please tell me and others what's one life lesson everyone should hear before it's too late. Share it in the comments below. Thanks," he said, raising his voice just enough to make the server pause. "Tonight's not just about celebrating my incredible mom's birthday. It's also about a big change for our family." Ashley took out her phone recording. "We're moving into mom's apartment." Daniel beamed. "Just makes sense. She doesn't need all that space anymore. And we're starting a family. It's such a gift. Honestly, so generous. Let's raise a glass to the woman who made it happen." Glasses clinked. I didn't move. My fork hung in midair, limp in my hand. He looked at me smiling too hard. "Right, Mom." The pressure in the room snapped into place like a trap springing shut. Ashley had the camera on me. Everyone stared, waiting for my reaction. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I panicked. My brain froze. I felt like I'd been pushed onto a stage in the middle of a performance I'd never auditioned for. I forced a smile, took a sip of wine and waited for the room to move on. Didn't. Not really. The conversation shifted, but I sat there as the blood drained from my face, the meal turning to cardboard in my mouth. Ashley launched into how she'd decorate the apartment. Paint swatches, crib placements, taking down the old lady curtains. She laughed and said, "Of course we'll let you visit. You can still keep your plants on the balcony if you want." Daniel added, "We'll give you plenty of time to move. No pressure." They hadn't even asked me. They declared, announced to my friends that my home, the place I'd shared with my late husband for 30 years, the home I cried in, slept in, repaired by hand after a pipe burst, was now their starter nursery. I excused myself halfway through dessert. Daniel gave me a look like I was being dramatic, but I just told them I wasn't feeling well. Ashley offered to call a rideshare, declined. I walked 3 blocks in heels I hadn't worn in years until my toes blistered and my chest burned, but it was the only way to get my thoughts to stop screaming. By the time I got home, my apartment felt different, not safe, not mine. I locked the door, checked it again, and then again their voices echoed in my head. Ashley laughing about my curtains, Daniel saying I didn't need the space. My husband's photos lined the bookshelf, and suddenly they looked like warnings, not memories. I sat at the kitchen table with my hands flat against the surface, and I couldn't move for almost an hour. When I finally did, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in months. My husband's old file folders, legal documents, wills, emergency contacts. The last time I looked through them was right after his funeral. I found something there I'd forgotten. A power of attorney form from 2 years ago, signed during a hospital stay when I had pneumonia. Daniel's name was on it. My stomach turned. I texted my lawyer at midnight and asked if it was still valid. The reply came in the morning. "If you didn't revoke it, yes, we need to talk." That's when it hit me. Daniel wasn't guessing. He wasn't asking. He was executing a plan. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I kept seeing Daniel's face as he clinked that glass and made the announcement, the way he looked at me. Not with love, not with hesitation, but with expectation, like I was a check, being cotched. I sat on the couch with my robe wrapped tight, staring at nothing while Ashley's voice replayed in my head. "We're just so grateful you agreed." I never agreed. Not with words, not with looks, But I didn't stop it either. I let the performance go on. That was my mistake. And now it was already spreading. When I checked my phone in the morning, Ashley had posted a real slow panning shots of my living room, set to soft acoustic music, captioned the beginning of our family's next chapter, saying goodbye to Grandma's place and hello to our new home, my couch, my bookshelves, my window with the lace curtains, 37 comments. So sweet of her to pass it down. She must be so proud. I scrolled until I couldn't breathe. Daniel had already emailed me a transition plan, a list of things they wanted moved out by the end of the month, along with suggested dates for the handover, and a link to a Pinterest board titled Neutral Nursery Aesthetic. There were photos of my bedroom stripped down to a crib and rocking chair. I hadn't even responded to the dinner yet. I hadn't said yes, but they had. I called my lawyer before 9:00 a.m. Her tone was sharp the moment I mentioned Daniel's name on the old power of attorney. You need to come in today. I dressed like I was going to war. Press slacks, collared shirt, shoes that made noise on hardwood. I brought every folder, every deed, every old paper I could find. She flipped through it all, lips pursed. You never revoked this, Mary. Technically, he has access to make some decisions on your behalf if you're deemed medically unable. But am not. I said correct. But if he had a doctor say you were showing signs of memory decline or exhibiting confusion, even just on a form, he could use this to challenge you in court. It's rare, but it happens, especially in family property disputes. My stomach dropped. She looked at me over her glasses. We need to revoke this now, and you need to be careful what you say and sign. Everything needs to go through me. Do you understand? I nodded. I didn't trust my voice when I got home that afternoon. My key didn't work on the front gate for 2 full minutes. I jiggled, twisted, panicked, until I realized the gate lock had simply been stiff with the cold. I felt like an idiot, but I also wondered for one terrifying second if they changed the locks that night. I didn't tea cook. I didn't clean. I sat at my kitchen table and wrote out a list. Everything ID paid for in Daniel's adult life. His college tuition ID helped cover when he lost his scholarship. His wedding, where I paid for the flowers and half the catering. The emergency loan for their treatments 2 years ago. That never happened. They weren't even trying. They just said the word baby and new ID melt. And now this. I walked into my bedroom and opened the closet. There were old photo albums on the top shelf. I pulled one down and flipped through the pages. Daniel in his Little League uniform. Ashley at the engagement party smiling with perfect teeth. Me and my husband holding champagne flutes in this very apartment. I closed the book. Then I pulled out my phone. I texted Daniel one sentence. We need to talk. And not through announcements or Pinterest boards. No reply for 4 hours. When it finally came, it was a single thumbs up emoji. That's when I knew I wasn't his mother anymore. I was his obstacle. A locked door. A name on a deed. Something he needed to move out of the way. And he wasn't going to ask again. 3 days after the dinner, a manila envelope slid under my apartment door while I was in the shower. No knock, no doorbell, just the soft scrape of paper against tile. I didn't even notice it until I stepped out and nearly slipped on it with wet feet. I opened it right there in my towel, heart already racing. Before I unfolded the pages, it was a document titled Preliminary Transfer Agreement, Residential Property. There was a line for my name already filled in. Another line for Daniel and another for Ashley. The only one blank was the signature mine. Attached was a cover note written in Daniel's voice, but clearly typed by someone else. No rush. Just need this signed before Friday to move forward with bank approvals. Thanks again, Mom. Bank approvals. That meant they weren't just planning. They were already using my home as leverage. I sat down on the edge of the tub, paper dripping from my hand. I texted my lawyer again, and she called me. Within minutes, I sent her a photo of the document. Her voice dropped into something calm but firm. He's moving forward under the assumption this is already his. If you sign that, it's over. Don't even leave it on the counter unattended. Shred it, I said. He mailed it, she said. Then that means he's creating a paper trail that makes it look like you're participating voluntarily. Don't respond. Do not engage in writing. That evening, I pulled out the filing cabinet again, determined to understand every scrap of paper tied to my name. That's when I found it. A health directive packet from 2 years ago during my hospital stay. When ID had the chest infection, I had signed a few forms under stress, mostly boilerplate stuff, but buried in the packet was a limited authority designation. naming Daniel as my proxy for financial decisions during incapacity. I remembered it now. He brought it to me while I was hooked up to N4, saying, "Just sign these so I can help with the insurance stuff." I hadn't even read them, just scribbled my name to get him off my back. My lawyer confirmed it later that night. If they found one doctor willing to claim I was forgetful or confused, they could try to challenge my ability to manage my own assets. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be enough to freeze me up in court. And if I had accidentally agreed to something over email or text without realizing the implications, they could spin that as consent. I went completely still. I replayed the birthday dinner, the way Ashley smiled while filming me, the way Daniel kept using past tense language. Mom agreed. She's letting us. She said we could. It wasn't sloppy. It was practiced, rehearsed. He was narrating a version of the truth that they'd been building behind my back, and I had let them. I spent the next morning freezing my credit, securing my bank accounts and revoking every form of power Daniel had ever held. I removed him from my emergency contacts. I changed the password to my financial apps. I started keeping every interaction in writing and screenshotting everything. I didn't reply to his text anymore, but I saved everyone. That evening, I called the building manager and asked who had accessed the security gate the night before. He hesitated, then said, "Daniel used your spare key. He said he was checking on you." I hadn't asked him to. I hadn't been hurt. I hadn't even known he still had a spare. I asked if the law could be changed. He said yes, but it would take a formal request. So I filed one that night. I moved all my important documents into a metal lockbox and put it under my bed. I stopped drinking wine with dinner. I stopped taking sleep aids. I needed my mind sharp. I started journaling every single interaction I had with Daniel and Ashley in case I ever needed to prove my mental clarity. I even made a fake grocery list one night and added it to the journal to timestamp my handwriting. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being hunted. They weren't just hoping I'd hand over my home. They were building a case to take it without asking. The doorbell rang 2 days later, and when I looked through the peephole, Ashley stood there smiling like nothing had happened. White gift bag and a cup of iced coffee with my name misspelled on it in marker. I opened the door halfway. Not enough to invite her in. Just thought I'd stop by. She said, "Voice Sugar Sweet wanted to check on you, and I brought your favorite hazelnut cream extra ice." She tried to hand me the drink, but I didn't move. "You didn't text first." She laughed lightly, brushing it off. Figured, it'd be nice to pop in. "You've been quiet." I let her stand there, hoping silence might make her leave, but instead she pushed the gift bag toward me. "It's vitamins," she said, eyes wide, like a child about to share a secret. "Prenatals, we're hoping, but you already knew that." I blinked. "You're pregnant." She placed a hand on her stomach dramatically, like she was already showing just a couple weeks. We weren't going to say anything, but after the dinner, she looked down, pretending to get emotional. "It meant so much that you gave us your place. We feel like it's a sign she wasn't pregnant." I knew at the moment she said it. Her eyes were too alert, too eager. And later, when she finally came in, after I stepped aside for a second, she put her purse down and went straight to the kitchen, opened the fridge, pulled out a sparkling water and drank it without checking the label. No one worried about caffeine or carbonation that casually if they were newly pregnant and anxious. But I didn't say anything. I just watched. She started walking through the apartment like it already belonged to her, talking about where the crib would go, how she'd paint the walls, how she might knock out the narrow hall closet to open the space. I stood in the corner of the living room, frozen, listening to her redesign my home like she was flipping it for resale. "This bookshelf," she said, running her fingers along the top. "We can donate it, right? It's a little outdated. My husband built that bookshelf with his own hands 31 years ago." I didn't respond. She went on opening drawers, peeking into the laundry room, commenting on what furniture was worth keeping. I followed her silently into the hallway. "We should probably convert this room into a nursery sooner than later," she said, gesturing toward my sewing room. "You know, before you get tired of climbing stairs, babies need a calm environment, not clutter." That was when something in me finally snapped, but I still didn't yell. I just asked Ashley, "When did your doctor confirm the pregnancy?" She blinked fast, caught, then laughed awkwardly. "It's early, too early for tests. I just know. So no ultrasound, no blood work. I mean, we're going Monday," she stammered. "Anyway, you'll be the first to know. Obviously. The word rang in my ears like an insult. I watched her take her sparkling water back to the living room and scrolled on her phone while her purse sat open on the kitchen counter. Inside, I saw a manila folder. I waited until she was in the bathroom. When I peeked in, I saw copies of my apartment floor plan labeled with new furniture placement and a printed Zillow estimate of its current value. She was staging the property. They hadn't moved in. They were flipping it in their heads, maybe even to someone else. I snapped a photo of the documents, returned the folder quietly and sat on the couch before she came back out. "Do you want to stay for dinner?" I asked. She looked shocked, then smiled. "Sure, that'd be so nice. Should I call Daniel?" I said no, just us. I served her frozen pasta and stale wine, let her get comfortable. Then I watched her leave around 8, still smiling, still talking about color palettes and baby names, completely unaware I had seen what was in her bag. I locked the door after her and pushed my heavy sewing machine in front of it. I wasn't scared. I was focused. I opened my phone, scrolled through my screenshots and started a new folder called Proof. This wasn't family. This was fraud. And now I had evidence. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise and started packing, not with boxes, but with information. I called my old friend Iris, a retired real estate agent who now lived 3 towns over and mostly spent her days tending roses and ignoring her ex-husband's texts. Iris didn't ask why I was calling at 6:11 a.m. Just said, "Talk to me," and I did. I told her everything, every step, from the birthday dinner to Ashley's fake pregnancy, the documents in the purse, the forged narrative. They were spreading like a family fairy tale. Iris listened without interrupting, then said, "You need to get out before they realize you've caught on." She offered to help me list the apartment quietly through her network of private buyers. No public listings, no online photos, just word of mouth among serious cash clients. "You'll get a little less," she said, "but it keeps them from interfering or contesting the sale before it closes." I agreed immediately. The next 3 days, played dumb. I texted Daniel short, friendly replies. I liked Ashley's new nursery photos on Instagram. I posted a picture of my dinner one night, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, with a caption about how nothing beats home cooking. I wanted them to believe I was still docile, still soft. Meanwhile, I booked an inspection for a small property I found through Iris, a 2-bedroom cabin 2 states away in a lakeside retirement town where no one knew me, and no one owed Daniel anything. The listing photos showed an outdated kitchen and a cracked patio, but I didn't care. It was private. It was mine. The seller was a widower looking to downsize and agreed to sell for cash if I didn't haggle. We shook hands the next day. While Daniel thought I was watching cooking shows, I was coordinating a wire transfer and scheduling movers for furniture. I hadn't told anyone I was taking. I hired a man from church, Frank, who had a truck and didn't ask questions. He boxed up my husband's old workshop gear, the heirloom dishes and the boxes of photos from the attic, all in. One day, I told the building superintendent I'd be traveling indefinitely, and not to share anything with family unless I gave permission. He raised his eyebrows but nodded. Then I went down to the leasing office and changed my emergency contact to Iris. I changed my mailing address to a PO box in the new town, started forwarding mail through USPS with a random start date 2 weeks later so they wouldn't notice the gap. I even called the electric company and set a shoe-off date under the excuse that I was moving in with a relative for medical recovery. The woman on the phone offered condolences. I didn't correct. Every day I kept a neutral face, a gentle tone. I let Daniel believe I was weak. I let Ashley believe I was grateful. But behind their backs, I was unraveling their whole plan. Moa. The 4th day, Ashley texted me a video, her sitting on my living room couch, talking about bringing warmth back into the space. The caption read, "Soon to be ours, but forever Grandma's legacy." It had 2,000 views. I didn't cry. I took a screenshot. I filed it under proof. That night, I left one single hint. I placed an empty suitcase in the hallway where Ashley would see it the next time she popped in without asking. She think I was packing for a short trip. She tell Daniel they think. They still had time. They didn't. I was leaving before the week was out, and by the time they realized the keys would be in someone else's hands, and the only trace ID left behind would be a locked file cabinet, and the scent of lavender they never be able to wash off the curtains. It happened on a Tuesday late afternoon, just as I was wrapping up a call with the title company confirming that the apartment sale would close in 72 hours, all in cash. No contingencies, just how Iris had arranged it. I had just hung up when the not CK came sharp, insistent, not the polite kind. I didn't answer. I stood in the hallway, silent, listening. The knock came again. Then a voice. Daniel's. Mom opened the door. I didn't move. I knew he brought his key. I also knew ID had the locks changed 2 days ago, a detail I hadn't mentioned to anyone. I heard the key. Try. Fail. Jiggle. Pause. Then a heavier knock. Mom, I need to talk to you. I waited. Eventually he stopped trying the lock and just started talking through the door, not answering my text. And Ashley's freaking out. We need to know what's going on. I didn't reply. I just leaned against the wall, arms folded. We found out about the realtor, he said, tone shifting. Iris called someone. We know you're selling the place. Are you serious? Silence. You're sabotaging your own family. Do you understand that? More silence. Then his voice got lower, quieter, like he thought I was standing right there. If you don't open this door and talk like an adult, I swear to God I'll do what I have to do legally. He left after that, but he left something behind, an envelope shoved through the door frame, almost exactly like the one I'd gotten before. Inside was a formal notice typed and printed, a request for transitional occupancy review signed by a legal assistant from a firm I didn't recognize, with a highlighted section that said pending potential medical guardianship claim. I took the paper, placed it on the table and called my lawyer. She answered. Before the second ring, I read the sentence aloud. She sighed. They're escalating. They're going to try and challenge your competency. They're not just pushing, they're building a case. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my lockbox open, organizing my documents, copying files, recording myself, reading a summary of my financial decisions to date with timestamps, and emailing it to a secure folder my lawyer had access to. I attached a list of every transaction, every screenshot, every text. I narrated why I had done each thing clearly without stammering, with dates, times and references. I showed the sale agreement, the purchase offer on the cabin, the inspection report. It was exhausting, but it had to be airtight. I wasn't just protecting my assets, I was protecting my mind, because the moment someone says you're forgetful, people stop listening to what you actually remember. The next day, Ashley showed up alone. She didn't even knock. She stood in the hallway yelling loud enough for neighbors to peek through their blinds. We're trying to grow our family, and you're being cruel. She screamed. You said, we have a home. You said we were welcome. She pulled out her phone and I saw the little red light blinking. She was filming. I opened the door just enough to be seen, but not enough to be heard clearly. I said only one word. Leave her video. Caught that. Just that. Her crying. Me looking cold. That night, a video went up on her account titled When Family Betrays You, a Pregnancy Without a Home. It had music, slow fades and over 4,000 likes. Within hours, people commented, how could a mother do this? Disgusting behavior from a boomer hoarder. She doesn't deserve grandkids. I screenshot everything, saved every post, sent it all to my lawyer. The next day, Daniel texted me a single sentence. If you want to avoid court, sign the attached. And well, forget all of this. It was a PDF, a transfer of deed agreement. Ashley had signed it. Daniel had signed it. My name was left blank. I forwarded it without opening it. Then I texted Daniel back for the first time in days. You'll be served within the week. Do not contact me again. Then I turned off my phone by sunset. I had my bags packed, my keys ready, and a note left behind for the buyers. Everything here is yours now, except the silence that I'm taking with me. I left it for 35 a.m., just before the sky began to change. When the streets were quiet and the only sound was my rolling suitcase crossing the cracked pavement outside the apartment I'd lived in for 32 years. I didn't look back. Iris met me 2 towns over with coffee, and a smile that said everything she couldn't say out loud. The cabin was 4 hours away, tucked near a lake, surrounded by trees and silence. And when I arrived, I didn't unpack right away. I just stood in the empty kitchen and exhaled so deeply it felt like I'd been holding my breath for months. I didn't check my phone. I knew what would be waiting, and I was right when I finally turned it on 3 days later. There were 37 missed calls, 19 voicemails, and more than 60 texts, mostly from Daniel, a few from Ashley, and several from numbers I didn't recognize. But it was the group text that made my stomach twist. Cousins, family, friends, even my own sister had been pulled in screenshots. Ashley had sent them the video of me kicking her out. Daniel had written a long message about how ID abandoned them right when their baby was coming, how ID flipped their home out from under them and ran away like a coward. The baby lie was still going, but worse, people were believing it. I didn't reply to a single message, but I read them all, and the disappointment hit like cold water. People who ID hosted for holidays, helped with bills, called when their parents died, now saying things like, "I hope you come to your senses or family should stick together." It was clear Daniel wasn't just rewriting our story, he was casting himself as the victim. But then something unexpected happened. My niece, Melissa, the one who never liked Ashley, texted me privately, "Aunt Mary, I don't buy any of this. You okay?" I replied, "Yes, safe and done." She sent back a heart emoji and said, "Call me if you ever need backup." I didn't cry, but I felt it, the quiet loyalty. It reminded me not everyone was fooled. The next day, my lawyer called to confirm the sale had closed. The funds were transferred, the deed filed legally. The apartment was no longer mine and never Daniel's. I asked her about the guardianship threats. She said, "They want risk filing now. You've outmaneuvered them, and the social narrative won't hold in court once we show the real timeline. But you should update your will immediately." I already had weeks ago. Everything now went to a community trust that supported elder women starting over my cabin, my savings, even the small life insurance policy ID kept all these years. Daniel and Ashley were not only cut out, they were legally blocked from contesting it. That evening, I emailed the final copy to my lawyer, then poured myself a glass of water and sat on the front porch of the cabin, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. It was quiet, not lonely, just clean, wide open, quiet. My phone buzzed one last time before I turned it off for the night. It was Daniel. No greeting, no apology, just "If Dad could see you now, he'd be disgusted." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what his father would say if he were alive. He'd say, "She should have done it sooner." It started with a package, no return address, no note, just a slim white box left outside the iCabin's front door, wrapped in tissue paper and ribbon, like some kind of peace offering. Inside was a framed sonogram photo and a card that said, "Can we start over, AD?" The image looked real at first glance, but I'd seen it before. Ashley had posted the same stock sonogram from a pregnancy app months ago, as a vision board placeholder. They had printed a fake, mailed it, framed it. I set it on the counter without touching it again. 2 days later came the email subject line. "Dinner message body will be in your area this weekend. Talk, no pressure, just family." I didn't respond. On Saturday night, headlights appeared on the gravel road around 6:40 p.m. Just as the sun was dipping behind the tree line. I watched from the kitchen window as a silver SUV parked at the base of the path. They got out dressed too nicely for a surprise visit. Ashley in heels, Daniel and his old blazer holding a bottle of wine. I didn't open the door. I let them knock, first soft, then harder. "Mom," Daniel called. "We just want to talk." We drove all this way. I stood inside with the lights off, hands resting on the back of the chair, not moving, not reacting. Ashley's voice joined his, suddenly cracking with false emotion. "You're shutting out your grandchild," she yelled. "Is that what you want?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. They stood outside for 22 minutes. I timed it. Eventually, the wine bottle was left on the step and they drove off without a word. The label read "Forgiveness Pinot Noir." I poured it down the drain. That night, Daniel sent one final message. "You win. Hope it was worth losing your family." I didn't reply. I simply screenshot it, added it to the folder and deleted his contact for good. The next morning, I had coffee with my new neighbor, Claire, who had moved to the area after divorcing her husband of 40 years and starting a tiny soap business out of her garage. She laughed when I told her about the fake sonogram. "People get bold when money's involved," she said, "but you didn't give them what they wanted. That makes you dangerous to them now." I nodded. Dangerous. Felt new. Felt right. That week, I bought a new garden bed, planted Thyman mint and joined the local coop. When the phone buzzed again on Friday, it was a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then curiosity won and I hit play. It was Ashley. "Hi, Mary, it's me. I know things got messy, and I just wanted to say, we're still hoping to keep a door open for the baby for the future. Please call." I deleted it because the only door that mattered was the one they could never walk through again. It wasn't a dramatic affair. No mahogany office or gasps from shocked relatives. Just a quiet meeting over black coffee at my lawyer's desk on a cloudy Thursday morning. The final signature sealing what I'd already known in my bones. Daniel and Ashley were officially cut out of everything. No fallback clause. No vague reconsideration. Just a clean, binding document stating that every asset I owned, from my cabin to my savings to the silver photo frame on my nightstand, now belonged to a community endowment I created in my husband's name, dedicated to supporting older women escaping financial or emotional abuse from their families. My lawyer, Annette, slid me a hard copy as she double-checked each page. "It's done," she said. "If they challenge it, they lose. The paper trail is unbreakable." I nodded and took the folder, feeling the weight of it like armor. 2 days later, Melissa called. "I think Daniel knows," she said. "He's been posting those passive-aggressive quote images again. Betrayal always comes from the ones closest to you kind of stuff." And Ashley changed her Instagram bio to chosen family only. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Short and hard. Let them quote. I said they lost the right to my name when they tried to steal it. A week after that, I got a letter from the Shari's board confirming the account had gone live under the name The Quiet Exit Fund. With my first deposit already allocated, I reread the paperwork twice before tucking it into the cabinet beside my Temugs. That night, I opened a bottle of sparkling water and sat outside as the breeze came off the lake, scrolling through photos of the apartment I no longer owned. A new family had moved in. Young, simple, normal, no nursery plans, no manipulation, just smiles in a clean living room, no filters, and in the background, I saw the old bookshelf my husband built still standing. They hadn't torn it down. They placed plants on it. Felt like closure. My phone buzzed again later that night. A message from Daniel's old college roommate. Of all people. "Saw what they did. You were right to cut them off. Wish my mom had done the same before my sister drained her dry." I replied with a simple thank you. Because the truth was, I hadn't just protected myself. I'd put a name on something millions of people lived through and never talked about. I was done being quiet, and while they stewed in their echo chambers of fake grievances, I had rewritten the ending they thought they were entitled to write. I didn't give them a fight. I gave them silence, and that, I was learning, was louder than anything they could scream. 6 months later, I stood on the back porch of my cabin, barefoot, with my hands wrapped around a warm mug of mint tea grown from the planter box I'd built myself, watching a line of birds trace the sky like a string being pulled across the lake. I hadn't heard from Daniel or Ashley in over 2 months, not since the final legal notice went through barring them from contacting me about any inheritance or estate matters. They didn't contest the will. They didn't try again. I think they finally understood I was gone, not just physically, but entirely, as if the version of me they once manipulated had packed her bags and disappeared forever. I spent my days differently now. Mornings in the garden, afternoons volunteering at the community center, evenings learning how to play chess with Claire, who swore I had a killer instinct. Under all that politeness, I'd made friends, real ones who never asked about money, who didn't smile only when they needed something. The cabin had become more than a retreat. It was a restart. I cooked again. I laughed out loud. I slept without clutching my phone like a weapon. The day before my birthday, I got a letter from Melissa with a photo of her newborn daughter, and a note that simply read, "If she grows up to be half as strong as you, you'll have done something right." I pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a sunflower and cried the quiet kind of tears that don't sting, the kind that rinsed the last of something away. That evening, I sat at the table and wrote a check to a shelter that helps older women escaping financial control, signed it and sealed it with the words "Use it well." She got out as the sun dipped behind the trees and the breeze moved gently through the wind chimes. ID hung from an old pine hook. My phone buzzed once more. An unknown number. I didn't flinch. I didn't even look. I powered it off and slid it in a drawer. I didn't need it anymore, because this life I had built, with no audience, no performance, no one clapping for something they helped break, was finally mine. The cabin was quiet, and so was I, and for the first time in years, that silence didn't feel like something missing, felt like peace, permanent, final, exactly how I wanted it, exactly what they were never going to touch again.